Move aside, let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
Welcome to the Ambulance World Podcast, where we make EMS connections across the globe. Now, here's Evan.
Thanks for the applause. That was awesome. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is Evan Fewer over at ambulanceworld.com. And thanks for joining us. This is our first podcast and what we hope is going to be a long series of podcasts here on ambulanceworld.com, where we're going to be sharing information about EMS, emergency medical services across the globe. The goal here at ambulanceworld.com is to facilitate connections, connecting people in different countries, different environments, all across the planet, to share information, see what other people are doing that are good, that is helpful, that's useful, things that you would wish that you were doing yourself. Additionally, if you're like me, I'm kind of one of these guys that likes to wander all over the place. I like to travel the world. I love watching those travel shows, and I always would like to travel and try different EMS experiences. So through these podcasts, you'll start to learn a little bit about me. But I've spent a lot of time. I'm a paramedic, currently working last 13, 14 years in New Jersey. I spent 2 years in the Middle East, primarily in Iraq. And I've spent some time in some other countries around the world, which we'll talk about in a lot of these other podcasts. And I find traveling exciting, learning about new cultures, learning about new ways that people are doing EMS, and being a paramedic, but being an EMT, a paramedic, a firefighter, you have a skill set that can help facilitate you interacting with people across the globe and helping people out. And that's what we're all about here. So our first podcast, recorded last week actually, with a gentleman by the name of Kevin McAvania. Now Kevin's a really interesting character, and he's all of 25 years old. Kevin started out an EMT in New Jersey and ended up working in the Middle East. He's been in Kuwait, I think he was in Iraq, and now he's currently working on a training contract actually in Egypt, training the Egyptian Navy on firefighting and medical operations. So he's talking about what his experiences there, his experiences with a lot of the turmoil that's been occurring in Egypt recently, and additionally talking about the job and how to go about finding jobs and ways that he found about finding jobs overseas. This is actually a really interesting conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. So here's our interview with Kevin. Hello everybody, this is Evan over at ambulanceworld.com. And this is our Virgin podcast. So I hope you enjoy it. And today is June 15th, 2012. And we're in the Mecca, the worldwide headquarters of AmbulanceWorld.com in scenic Cherry Hill, New Jersey, here in the United States. And we're going to be talking today with Kevin McAvania. So I'll tell you a little bit of a background story about Kevin leading into his introduction. I worked in New Jersey as a paramedic 13 years now. I've been a paramedic for 20. And the department I worked with, I knew Kevin from there. And he was an EMT, rescue guy, firefighter. And I ended up, I left the department for a couple years and I went to Iraq to work as a paramedic with the Department of Defense. And Kevin came a little bit later on with the same company that I was working with as a EMT, and he ended up spending about a year or so, am I right?
Yeah.
A year or so in Kuwait, working as a EMT, doing rescue work with the Department of Defense there. And so we kind of know each other. He ended up coming back to the United States. And he was working. We actually had worked together on our county hazmat team together. So we did hazmat work together. He's been doing tactical EMS in some other parts of New Jersey, rescue R&D related to new rescue technologies, and so he's teaching disaster preparedness and incident command system stuff. So this is a very knowledgeable, really sharp guy with a really pretty cool background. And then the thing that makes it all that more interesting is Kevin is all of 25 years old. I think I have socks older than Kevin. so that's a little bit of a background. I'll let Kevin in a minute introduce and talk about himself. But Kevin, he went a while ago, and he'll tell you more of the details. And he's working in Egypt now, working with the Egyptian. Well, I'll let him tell you who he's working with. But he's he's working on a training contract, training them in firefighting response and EMT stuff, and so we're going to kind of pick his brain, find out what it's like in Egypt, how it was to get the job, how hard was it to get the job. The big question that everybody wants to know: how much is he getting paid? We'll see if we could squeeze that out of him. What the tax structure is like for Americans going over there, but also, is this something that's available to other nationalities to get jobs like this? Absolutely. So, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody to Kevin. Hello, Kevin. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Good to be here with you guys.
So, just a real quick kind of description. We got lucky here. I had sent Kevin an email and said, "Hey, we're doing this website, ambulanceworld.com, and I'd really like to interview you about your experiences in Egypt." And he said, "Sure, I'd like to do that." And I said, "All right, well, let's schedule a time and we'll record it by Skype." And he, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes later, my cell phone rang, and I see it's Kevin calling me. And I said, "Well, what the hell are you calling me from Egypt for?" He said, "No, I'm not in Egypt. I'm in New Jersey." So he's here on R&R. So the timing worked out real well. So he's actually in the office with us right here. So, how long have you been out of the country now for?
I've been out of the country. I arrived in Cairo on February 19th of 2012. I began this venture around January 30th of 2012.
So 4 or 5 months you've been out of the country now?
Yeah, about that.
Happy to be home?
Yeah, I miss Taco Bell and I miss driving.
Okay. It's actually funny. He says, I remember when I came back from Iraq, although I had been doing driving there, it was a war. There was still war going on there. So I remember when I came back and I took my car out of storage, and the first week that I was driving it, whenever a truck would pull up next to me, the first thing I would do is I would look over at the truck to see if the suspension was sagging, look at the driver, see if he was sweating, and looked inappropriately nervous.
Yep.
Then I realized I was in Jersey and probably didn't have to worry about that.
I'm not constantly avoiding trash bags anything on the road that might be IEDs.
Exactly. So I know we're going to kind of talk about a lot of things, but just start off. Tell us about what your job is. What is it that you do in Egypt?
My official title through my company is training something 3, which doesn't mean anything. What I'm doing is I'm working as a subject matter expert and consultant for the Egyptian government, the client from a U.S.-based company. The overall people in charge of this contract is the Department of Navy. My area of specialty as far as consulting is occupational safety and health and land-based firefighting. My job is to conduct audits, investigations, and essentially, more or less, bring the site that I'm working on up to acceptable standards of safety and health, specifically in regards to firefighting and firefighting training activities. Everything from SCBA management, respiratory protection protocol, confined space entry, our personal protective equipment, and everything that you could possibly imagine going on in a fire department is my responsibility from a safety standpoint.
Well, that sounds interesting. Now, is this a job where you're sitting in an office just kind of writing out guidelines and protocols, or are you out there on the fire grounds suiting up and working through the evolutions with these guys?
Both. We are a 6-man strong American team working with about 40 or 50 Egyptian retired and active duty officers.
Oh.
We split our time pretty evenly. When we put classes through our program, we have most of the time is classroom time. We right now the curriculum calls for practical evolutions at the end of the classes, the last week of practical evolutions. So during the first 2 to 3 weeks of the classes, I don't even see the students. So that's when I do my other responsibilities of research and writing new programs, writing respiratory protection program, which is my current endeavor. But then when the students come out to the fields, I switch modes from occupational safety and health coordinator to EMT. I'm suiting up, getting my Nomex coveralls, and then turnout gear on top of that with SCBA and helmet and hood in 110-degree weather. And I'm going out, standing out there all day and going in fires all day. So it's pretty diverse. I do a little bit of everything out there.
Well, it sounds like a tough job. It sounds interesting as well, actually. It sounds fun. Now, just to clarify, so all your students are Egyptian naval officers, is that correct?
Egyptian naval, right now we're doing mostly officers. However, we do also put through, and we're planning to increase the throughput to include more Egyptian naval enlisted personnel as time permits with the Egyptian Navy.
Okay, now, you obviously speak English very well?
Yes.
Do you speak any Arabic?
I do. There's a bit of a learning curve, as you stated before. I lived in Egypt, and Kuwait,
Okay.
lived and worked there for a while, and just in the U.S., there's several dialects, if you will, of English, depending on what part of the country you're living in. There's also several dialects of Arabic. You have Gulf Arabic, which is what I was introduced to initially, which was tough to learn, obviously. But when you're immersed in the culture and in the language 24/7, you pick it up pretty easily. So I came back to the United States for a while, and then now I'm back in Egypt, and I had a working knowledge of Gulf Arabic, and Egyptian Arabic is much different. It's a different dialect of Arabic. So I can, at first I could rudimentarily communicate, kind of get words across here and there, but now I'm starting to transition over to Egyptian Arabic, and it's getting to the point where I'm able to take care of most basic things I need to from day-to-day activities.
Now, for somebody who would go over there who maybe doesn't have a knack for learning languages, are you able to get by day to day, both in your job and outside of your job, without learning Arabic?
In my job, I certainly can. We are very fortunate that all our counterparts in the Egyptian Navy side that are handling the school, they all speak very good English. Most of them have been to United States language schools through the Department of Defense. And as far as out in the population, it's very dependent on where you are. Alexandria which is where I live, Alexandria, Egypt, it's iffy. It's about 50-50. Most people can get a little bit of English through, but it might be tough trying to find something or ask where something is. But again, conversely, there are people that speak very good English out there. So it's about a 50-50 mix between getting things accomplished with no problem or almost getting nothing accomplished.
Now, as a coming from suburban America, tree-lined streets and middle-class houses, going to where you are, was there a little bit of a culture transition?
Yes. Egypt is not a very clean place. There's not much about. There's no public sanitation system in Egypt. At least nothing that's very comprehensive or organized.
Okay.
So you'll notice that most of the time there's trash is generally left on the streets, and where I live in Alexandria, my particular area is pretty nice. A lot of higher society Egyptian nationals live there. So I don't see as much of it, but in Cairo, it's generally accepted that trash is just burned on the sidewalk or wherever it may be. So there's a high air pollution content out there due to burning trash and everything. Hygiene standards are a little less. Drinking. You can drink the tap water to an extent in Alexandria.
Okay.
But it's really not that bad overall. Egypt is a very dry place. It's everything is made out of concrete there, so there's not much color. Everything is kind of one shade of tan.
Yeah, I remember. Well, a lot of the Middle East is like that. I remember from Iraq that when you would fly from one place to the other, you would look outside of the helicopters, and it was just variations of tan and beige.
Yep. I'm actually surprised. There's actually a lot of trees in Alexandria. My street that I live on is flanked on both sides by several different types of trees. It's actually a pretty good canopy of shade when you're walking down the street.
Oh, that's probably very comfortable.
It is.
Oh, that's nifty. Now, so you're a pretty young guy. So you how old were you when you first went overseas?
I went to Kuwait. I was 21, 22.
Well, let's take a step back a little bit to that, if you don't mind. So you're 21 years old, and so you're a relatively young man. And what made you want to go and try something new like that?
Well, you convinced me to go over there finally.
Blames it on me.
But I've been involved in medicine, emergency medicine, since I was 17 when I was in high school, and I've always been the person where the basic, just regular everyday thing just isn't enough for me. Working on an ambulance, where we worked in New Jersey, it just was getting wasn't.
You get bored easily.
Yeah, I get bored. I want
that.
something more. I want something different. And working on an ambulance is, while you get hear no two calls are ever the same. This, that, and the other thing. There's still an amount of complacency that's involved in working on an ambulance, no matter where you are. I've worked in some of the busiest ambulances in the world, and I wanted something different. I want to branch out from sitting in a box for 12 hours.
Okay.
So that's why I started taking avenues of hazardous materials and decon emergency management. And then Evan came along and told me about what he's doing in Iraq. I said, that'd be pretty freaking cool. It's not that's not a common thing. You don't see everybody, every EMT in the world saying, I work over in wherever. So I started to look into it and said, why not? I'm young. I don't have anything really holding me back here. So I went over for a year and tried it, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, so do you think a lot of the different disciplines within EMS that you were learning, hazmat, disaster preparedness, you were working on a tactical team. Mm-hmm. Do you think making yourself a subject matter expert, or at least well versed in all these different areas, was helpful in acquiring these jobs?
Absolutely. Getting jobs overseas is all about marketing yourself.
Okay.
You have these companies who are investing a lot of money into the employees to work in these jobs. These companies are getting a lot of money, and in turn paying their employees a lot of money for their skills and their knowledge. So when a company will give you, say these are your minimum requirements. Yeah. If you have these minimum requirements, there might be 400 people that apply for this job with minimum requirements. But if you have minimum requirements and then 3 pages of extra stuff,
okay,
these companies are going to be much more apt to hire you because you have a higher monetary value to them, so they will invest more money into you to hire you and to get you into these jobs. So the more diverse you are, you have a much higher chance of getting jobs like this.
Yep, I would agree with you. I know for me going in, I had a kind of an other than traditional background going into my overseas deployments, and it was absolutely, not only was it helpful in actually getting the job, but when I got there, it gave me a little bit of an understanding of scene security in hostile environments. Sure. Although the companies try to train you to a certain extent, if you have that mindset before going in, especially to war zone jobs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A perfect case in point is this job in Egypt. I was hired as a EMT instructor. However, things change on a daily basis in the contracting world. And when lo and behold, I haven't taught a single class since I've been there. Thankfully, I have a pretty good working knowledge of occupational safety and health. And we saw a need that there needs to be a full-time position almost of a person who has understandings of OSHA requirements and NFPA and things like that. And I just happen to be versed in these areas, so I quickly assimilated into this role of a safety coordinator. So having this working knowledge is now beneficial for you, for the company, for the people you're working with, because companies, anywhere you are, not necessarily just overseas, but in general, a company, it's almost impossible to anticipate every need of a job, especially when your department's headquarters is 4,000 miles away on 2 continents away. So they're not able to see what's there. If you can't have something in your hands and see it and see how things are laid out, you're not going to be able to get a clear understanding of what you need. So it requires people on the ground there to come up with a set of, this is what we have and this is what we need. And we found out that we needed somebody to take care of safety and health. And the company, I don't blame the company at all for not realizing that, because there's no way for them to have known that.
Well, it's actually interesting, because this kind of goes into a whole other discussion which I've had with a lot of people in going to overseas jobs, especially when you go to when you're coming from a Western country, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Ireland, Canada, United States, coming from the South Africa, coming to those kind of countries, and then you go to certain places in the Middle East, South America, some places in Asia. You need to not have the same expectations of everything going exactly as planned beforehand.
Oh, absolutely.
We used to have a joke, there's a Marine Corps Semper Fi. So we used to say, based on the cartoon character Gumby, who was very rubber guy, he had to be Semper Gumby. Always had to be flexible, willing to change, because your job description could change, not just day to day, but almost hour to hour.
You're absolutely right. And it's been said by people much more intelligent than I, and especially related to tactical medicine, that the best laid plans go to crap when the first bullet starts to fly.
Yep.
You can plan all you want, but there are just things you cannot anticipate and you cannot account for. And those things are going to show themselves pretty quickly, and then your plan will just fall apart around it. So you have to be able to adapt instantly. You have to have contingencies, and you have to figure, this probably isn't going to work. So we need to come up with 4 other things that may work.
Well, I think you and I probably have a similar personality trait, that I don't like to pre-plan too much,
right.
And I kind of like to go with the flow a lot. Yeah. And the fact that things change constantly kind of keeps it a little bit exciting and a little bit fresh.
It absolutely does.
Because I know in EMS here, and it's not as a knock to having a standard EMS job, but everything's very predictable. You show up, you know that you're going to have a standard mix. You're going to have probably a chest pain, a stroke, a trauma. You might have a gunshot. It's kind of the same thing every day, right, with some variations. And going overseas, you have those same variables, but then you throw in that you're learning a whole new culture, a whole new religion, a whole new set of foods. No, actually, here's another question: how are you liking the food in the Middle East?
The food is not bad. Everything there is very fresh and very natural. You don't have steroids, you don't have chemicals in the foods over there. The beef, the chicken is much better there than it is here. That's awesome. Even the natural raised whatever stuff here just does not compare to the food there. The beef there is fresh. The chicken just tastes different. It just tastes better. If you have vegetables or fruit and something, you almost guarantee that stuff was in the ground yesterday.
That's awesome.
The quality of the food is incomparable. And you just have to get around how it's prepared. Some people are okay with having food prepared in different manners, and others don't. And you just have to keep an open mind about it. It's like George Zimmerman from
that show. What is that food? Bizarre Foods.
Bizarre Foods. He says everything. He said, if it looks good, eat it. And that's something that I live by. If this looks good, if it smells good, why not? Eat it and see what happens.
Yeah, I tell you, I spent some time in Southeast Asia, and I ate some things I'm not exactly sure what they were, and I never got sick.
Yeah.
I never got sick. I ate some things that I didn't like, and I ate some things that I loved, but I never got sick.
Yeah. I've yet to get sick. Whenever you go to a foreign country, any country, your body's going to take a few days to adjust to it. If you live in the United States your whole life, if you live in Montana, in some one of these mid states where everything's very clean for the most part, pure, and you go to another country where you have different pathogens, you have different bacteria, different things in the air, your body's going to take some time to get acclimated to it, and you're going to have stomach problems for a few days. You're going to have respiratory problems. Yep. But that's nothing to be afraid of. It's not because you ate something bad. It's because your body is being introduced to things that's not accustomed to. Not necessarily good or bad, just different.
See, that's a great attitude, because a lot of people, they fear change. Certainly, going to a different country, different culture is. But you know what? Once you do it once or twice, and you work at the kinks, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is.
That's pretty awesome. Now, so you were in Kuwait, came back for a while. You did a couple pretty cool things here in the United States, yep. And now you're off in Egypt. How long are you expecting to be there?
My first initial phase of the contract ends February 2013, and this time that's probably going to be when I'm done with it.
Okay.
It's a good job, but I have other things going on. I want to finish up school and some other things.
Okay.
So this job, when I initially took this job, I did it with the anticipation of working for 1 year to meet some financial goals, so I can meet some personal goals, in the years coming.
You see, well, so it's kind of so these jobs are always out there.
Yes.
As you know, we'll talk a minute about how to go about finding those jobs. So if you have I know for me, I had a whole bunch of debt, and I went to Iraq and I paid off my debt. And I was able to finance a business startup, and I did a lot of things. It helped achieve a lot of goals, and the same for you. And so you're not concerned about that once this job is done, that if you want to do this again, whether other opportunities like this will be available?
No, ever since contracting jobs have been around since the 80s, late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah.
That was when it was very behind the scenes. You really didn't. It wasn't advertised. You had to really know somebody to really get into these jobs. Since 2003, when the war in Iraq was in full swing, and all these companies like Z, formerly Blackwater, Triple Canopy, Aegis, when they started hiring all these ex-SEALs, these really big shooter guys to go over and do whatever it is that they did over there. That's when the contracting world sort of just blew up, and the United States government started to see, hey, we can throw money at people, and they'll do things that we don't want to do.
Okay.
So ever since then, hundreds of companies, thousands of companies, in many cases, have gotten into this overseas contracting world, and these jobs are out there. Anything. If you're an HVAC technician, you can find a job over in the Middle East somewhere doing something. You can make good money doing it.
Because most of our listeners here aren't, trained, highly skilled commandos. Actually, most of the world isn't like that. So most of the people that are going to be listening to this are going to be guys that are paramedics, that are EMTs or firefighters, and they're looking for a little excitement. They're looking to make a few dollars to try something different. So if you don't have that military background, is that a deterrent to looking for these kind of jobs?
Absolutely not. When I started looking at these jobs, I was 20 when I first started looking at these. I was in New Jersey EMT Basic.
Okay.
I was pretty much very, very vanilla as far as my skill sets and things like that.
That's a great way to explain it.
And you don't need to be, a super flight. You don't need to be a super flight paramedic with 30 years doing every kind of medicine on Earth to get jobs like this. If you look, you will find a job. And after the first job, it will be very difficult to get. After you get the first job, jobs will just be available at your will. Whenever you want a job somewhere, you will find one.
Well, actually, this is a good segue to this question. So what would your advice to be for somebody out there looking for their first time job? They want to work overseas. Maybe they want to work in a war zone. Maybe they just want to go work at a mining site in West Africa. Not necessarily a war zone job, but they want to leave the country. Yeah. They want to leave the safety of their country and try something new and exciting. But they don't necessarily, maybe they want to try a war zone. Maybe they don't want to have that level of risk, but they want to try something new. Sure. They don't have that experience. What's a good way to start?
There are a few things that you want to have taken care of before you even begin to apply for any sort of overseas jobs. First, you need to realize that it's going to cost a little bit of money. For the way I did it to get this job in Egypt, it cost a little bit of money, and from what the people I've talked to, and there's some very bright people out there who've been doing contracting for a long time, and they'll all give you the same advice that I'm going to give you guys. Number one, have a passport.
Okay.
Get it today. If you want a job next year, get your passport as soon as possible. The quicker you have it, the better off it's going to be.
Okay.
Number two, when these job postings come out, these companies are looking to fill these jobs immediately, because the longer these companies don't have people in these jobs, the more money these companies are losing. So you're going to have 400 people sometimes applying for a few jobs.
Okay.
So what you want to do is you want to have a resume, a good resume. In fact, I'd recommend there are a few companies out there who are professional resume writers, writing services. I use one in Massachusetts. It's $300 to write the initial resume. Okay. But they have most of these companies have guarantees. If you don't get the job, they will rewrite it for you free of charge until you do get the job.
That's awesome.
And
that's something that you did?
Yes, that's something I did. I used this company. And next thing you need to realize, before you even go any further, if you're well versed at all with the IRS, I love the IRS. They're some of my best friends. A lot of people don't like them. I love them. You need to understand. Start looking into the financial side of things with the IRS. All these things, job-seeking expenses, no matter where you are, what you're doing, are tax deductions.
Okay.
Resume services, job boards, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Okay.
These are all tax-deductible expenses. So
We want to preface check with your personal accountant that we're not here to give out tax advice.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not a tax professional in any means. I'm saying based on my personal experiences. Your resume is the window into your soul for these companies. Your resume is going to do most of the talking for you. It's going to paint a picture of you for the bulk of the time before you get this job. These companies might get 300 resumes in a day. So to have a resume that stands out, it's not something you put together in 15 minutes on Word, is a good thing. The more professional it looks, the more comprehensive it is, the better you're going to be.
Well, let me ask you just a place to start. You have a passport.
Yep.
In addition to the passport, I'm just going to throw in from personal experience. Have a couple copies of your birth certificate ready.
Yes, absolutely.
All your immunizations done. And certainly records of all your immunizations done. If you have say you had a criminal thing that ended up getting expunged when you were a teenager, have all the paperwork.
Yeah, you should
surrounding that.
Absolutely make sure. I recommend there's a specific flash drive that I carry with me. It's called an iron key, and it's a very highly military grade encryption flash drive. It's a metal shell. Okay. It's absolutely indestructible. I've brought it all over the world with me. It has dents in it. It's beat up, but it runs phenomenally, and it's very difficult unless you own that flash drive. There is next to no chance that anybody else is going to get the information off of it. Have digital copies of everything that you own. Your certifications, your demographics, your passports, birth certificate. Go to Kinko's and get like a real high resolution PDF copy of every one of those things.
Okay. Well, how did you find? So we have all of our documents together. You have a great resume. How do you find these job postings?
There are a few central outlets that collect these job postings from companies and disseminate them in various ways. My personal favorite, the only one I've ever really used, is a website called Secure Aspects Job Group. It was started by an ex-U.S. Special Forces guy, and essentially all these recruiters from these companies, they send Secure Aspects these jobs. They post them on a job board, and every day, they send out an email. I get at least 1 or 2 emails a day from them with just lists of jobs that are open in every field, from medicine to shooting to construction, HVAC, everything.
I actually get those notifications from Secure Aspects Group, and they have everything from cooks, truck drivers, medical people of all kind of different disciplines, plus all kind of crazy things like tank, artillery experts and shooting trainers. And
the thing to realize is, a lot of people think this contracting world is just about people going over to shoot people, and you have to understand that these companies need logistics, everything you could possibly imagine needing in the U.S. you need over there. Secretaries, everything. So anybody in any line of work can probably find a job somewhere, but specifically related to medicine, a lot of these companies go through Secure Aspects, and it's about $100 a year, I think.
It's about, if I remember correctly, and I don't want to misstate. I think it was like $49 for 6 months. Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. And what essentially occurs is you can go to this website and you can see these job listings for free. You can see the title of the job, where it is, and the company. But that's about it for free. But if you spend whatever, $100 a year or something, you can see the full job posting. The duties, the qualifications, and everything else. You can go on and apply for these jobs, usually directly with the companies that they're posting for.
Okay, yeah, that's all. I mean, I look at them and I know other people that found jobs through there, and they actually post a lot of domestic jobs as well.
They do.
Just like to be a EMT trainer at an Army base here in the United States. You made something like that.
In fact, yesterday I saw a couple emails. They needed a paramedic in Utah. They needed a paramedic or 2 in Virginia. So there are jobs everywhere. Contracting. In fact, I got a job today, an email for a company that said they need 14 paramedics in Afghanistan next week. So the jobs are out there. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, that's one of the things about when we're looking for these jobs. You need to have when you make the decision to go and apply, if you're going to do it in earnest, you need to have everything in order and ready to go. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times you'll get a job offer and they say we need you at the airport in 3 days.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Is that again, when these companies post these jobs, it's because they need people now, and it's not uncommon. Like you said, when I got my first job at CHS, I got my job offer, and 2 days later I had a plane ticket, and I was on a plane to Cape Canaveral, Florida. When they want you now. So make sure when you start applying for these jobs that you have provisions in place to have things put into storage, to have money available, finances in order, all these things. Because if if this job goes through and you get this job, you have a recruiter saying, all right, we need you in Iraq and by this time next week, and they'll get you there. They'll arrange all your travel for you and everything, but you need to be available for them almost immediately.
Well, I can tell you here at ambulanceworld.com, we'll be posting some resources and suggestions, things to get in order, like having durable power of attorney to a family member to handle certain things while you're away, and all those different kind of things that you might not think of before you go away for any period of time. But at the same time, I don't want to make it too complicated, because sometimes it's just about making a decision, getting the job, and going.
Yeah. It's obvious. It's a lot of it's it's. At first, I would have thought. I think a lot of people think it's a younger man's job. It's a younger man's field. People, young guys, go overseas, make a lot of money, and have fun. People don't have a lot of ties. Now that I'm over there, since I've been doing this, I'd say more people I know are married than not. Most guys have been retired military and things like that. They have families, and they're out. They go out, work out for a year or two. They make some pretty sound financial backing. They come back home, and every couple of years they might go back and forth. So it's not certainly not if you've been been around for a while, and you're later on in your life, I guarantee you're not going to be alone out there.
Well, I guess in the war zone jobs, you could forget about bringing a spouse with you.
Correct.
Come by yourself. But on the contract you're on now, you're living in a nice area in Alexandria.
Right.
You're in a nice apartment. You're not in a war zone. I think you mentioned some of the guys that you're working with are there with their spouses. Is that correct?
Yes. My company, when we came over in place of another subcontractor who was removed from the contract. So all 6 of us came over within about a month of each other. And the 2 guys that came here right before me, they had their, I think they're both actually engaged, but their significant others came over with them shortly after. They were here for about 2 or 3 months, and then they had them flown out there. And they're living there with them, and they both love it. In fact, one of the guys that I'm working with, who's been in Egypt with this job for almost 10 years now, he's married to an Egyptian woman, and he has a family. He has a family there. And
so if you're a paramedic, EMT, firefighter, and you're thinking about going overseas, trying to have a little bit of adventure, make a few dollars, if you're married, have kids, it's not necessarily an exclusion?
No, it's not. In fact, you're probably going to you're going to feel just as home going over and, worrying about your family, back home, and thinking about and having family back home, because I'd say it's at worst, it's an even mix of about a 50-50 mix of having people with families with ties back home as far as equal to amount of people who have nothing going on.
Well, so I'm going to ask you the $1 million question that everybody's sitting on the edge of the couch at home. they want, or listening to this podcast in the car. So, I'm not going to be so direct as to ask you exactly what you get paid, but generally these types of jobs, what's the range for, say, EMT or paramedic for this type of job?
Well, that's actually a pretty broad question given the circumstances. If you are a paramedic with 3 or 4 years underneath you, you have everything. Obviously, you have PALs. All the stuff that goes along with paramedic. You can go over to Iraq, Afghanistan, and work a paramedic job. You'll probably make high 5, maybe even to low 6 figures.
Okay.
Depending on the company, depending on the particular job you're doing.
So you mean more or less in the maybe $90,000 to $130,000 range?
I'd say I go back saying between 80 and 120.
Okay.
Maybe 130 might be a little on the high side.
U.S. dollars.
U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it goes from there. Paramedics are they're always looking for medics over there. People with military experience, people with law enforcement experience.
And how about if you're going to a non-war zone? You're going to a mining site in South America, Africa, or a job similar, a training contract in one of the Gulf states, for instance.
We'll probably offset that by between 10 and 15,000. You know,
Okay.
so you're looking maybe between 75 and 110.
So you figure 10, 15, $10 to $20,000 bump
Yeah,
for the danger pay.
correct.
So okay, so that's just a kind of an assessment you have to do on your own to decide whether it's worth that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
There are other caveats with pay. Obviously, there are things you need to look for. You need to ask them about completion bonuses, sign-on bonuses. You need to make sure that they have all their tax stuff in order to worry about your taxes here. There's a lot of things going along with pay, and that's almost an entire separate episode, I think, of this in and of itself.
Well, what I can tell everybody, when you look at the salary, some people look at it and go, oh, wait a second, let's pick a number, say $75,000. You go, $75,000, that's a decent income, but that's not a lot of money. But what you have to also think about is your housing's paid for, your food may or may not be paid for.
Right.
You may have M&I, they call it meals and incidentals, thrown in on top of that. And then the other thing, and again, this is not an official IRS recommendation. Speak with your tax accountant. But every year the amount changes. But if you are out of the country for at least 330 days of a
330 consecutive days out of a 365-day run.
Yeah, well, yeah. So within a 365-day run, you can come back for up to 30 days, right? You can be in the United States for up to 30 days, and then you are tax exempt. And I think the number is in the $90,000 range now.
I think it's 94 this year, 92 or 94.
Okay, so give or take. So if you're making $75,000 for sure, you are tax exempt at the federal level for all of that. You don't have to pay any federal income tax on that. And the states vary from state to state, so you basically have little to no tax liability back here in the United States. So where most of us are going to be paying in the area of 25 to 33% taxes, that's extra money you get to keep in your pocket. Your food is paid for, so you get. And what's the work schedule? Do you get a opportunity to actually get out and about and kind of experience the culture and the people, or are you working all day long every day?
Well, my particular job, we work about 10-hour days. We do that 6 days a week. Obviously does not leave much time to go and experience the culture. However, you have to understand that I also live in an apartment building. I live in a very nice apartment, so I have about a quarter-mile walk from where I get picked up every morning to my apartment. So, I mean, I don't go out every night, obviously, and go and do stuff, but going to the market, going from here to there, obviously getting a taxi because there's a lot of things are spread out in Egypt, and it's tough to walk all those places. So. Your job schedule is going to vary based on your job, based on your location. Sometimes if you're doing jobs, you might be working, six, 7 days off, and then days on, and have a few days off. It's really it varies so much. It's almost it's very difficult to kind of give a broad overview of it.
So overall, your schedule is more or less similar to what you would be working here. You do have days off. You get to go out and go shopping in restaurants and stuff periodically.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Now, do you now you're in Egypt? It's not a war zone. Do you feel safe there?
I do. Given my background and my experience, I feel safe pretty much anywhere. But the Egyptian people are very nice people. There is some political unrest in Egypt right now. However, that's generally centered in Cairo, which is about 4 hours southwest of me. So it bleeds over a little bit in Alexandria here and there, but being an American citizen living in Egypt, I really don't feel, I don't feel there's any hostile or any hostilities against me at all.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I visited Egypt years ago just as a tourist, and I went to Cairo. I was into Cairo and I went to Sharm el Sheikh.
Sharm el Sheikh.
And nice. Cairo was just very crowded, very crowded. I can't emphasize the crowded part.
16 million people in Cairo right now.
Yeah. But yeah, I never felt threatened or uncomfortable or scared.
And you'll find that most of the Muslim countries, Egypt, Saudi, Saudi, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, UAE, all the Gulf countries. Just the exception of obviously the ones that are in sort of unrest right now. Egypt being the exception. They're they're very nice people. It's a very very accepting culture. They'll be very nice to you. Because they with their religious and their cultural I don't know what word I'm looking for is the way they're raised, their religion and culture. They're very nice people. Just as a broad statement.
Well, I can tell you in the Middle East, my experience in the Middle East is everybody's very, they open their house and they're very hospitable. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest experiences I had, just memorable experiences, was I had an Iraqi interpreter who worked for us who had a infected toenail. It was actually so bad he almost became septic. And we took care of it. And he was very grateful, and he ended up showing up at the gate of our base. And he brought a carload of food, including a goat. It wasn't very big, but it wasn't cooked, but it was killed and dressed, and had it stuffed with parsley and garlic and onions, wrapped in tinfoil, ready to barbecue. Very nice. I thought that was just a very, very nice thing. I wasn't expecting anything for taking care of him, and he brought his family out to bring us food for a barbecue. And when we were eating chow hall food every single day. Not that it was so bad, but it was very nice to have some like a real meal.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're a very gracious culture. If you do something to help them, they are very. If you go out of your way to help them, they are very gracious to you because it's just the way they are, and I think it's really nice. If I see anybody who needs help with anything on the street, in fact, I helped a guy break into his car a couple of days before I left. I've seen him around the neighborhood. He lives.
Okay.
I think he lives in a building across from me. I've seen him around. I've seen him getting into his car before. And, I've never really talked to him. I saw him. He was trying to. I was talking to him. I said, "What do you need help?" He was like, "Yeah, I left my keys in my car." I got so we didn't really have any tools. In fact, I broke into this car with a limestone brick, a couple sticks, a nail, and an iPhone.
Well, you don't need a lot of finesse to break into a car with a brick, I don't think.
But I did it without breaking a window.
Oh, well, that's impressive.
And he was very gracious. He said, I've never. He was around my age. He said, I've never seen a foreigner who would go out of his way and stop to help a national here in Egypt. And he said, well, I said, I don't want to be locked out of my car. I don't like being locked out of my car, and I'm sure you don't either. So if you obviously needed a hand with it, so help you out. And he was very gracious. We went to the cafe, and he bought me a cup of coffee and everything. And they're just very genuinely grateful for everything they have.
So let me ask you. So you're going to go back. You're going back in a week or so?
4 days.
Okay. You're going to finish out your contract.
Yep.
When you're done, you come back home. You have some educational goals in mind.
Yes.
So going forward to the future, do you see this as something that you might do again? Maybe Egypt, maybe another country, going overseas periodically, maybe for a little adventure periodically.
Yeah, I always I said even when I was back here for a few years after Kuwait, I still look at those job postings I get every day. It's you might see that job that just pops up like this one and say, hey, why not? I think after I obtain my education goals that I have set for next year, I'll be in a better position to get more jobs than I can now, which is a pretty significant amount. However, I'm also looking to sort of branch off into different areas within medicine, so it's really wide open right now at this point. I'm not really committing to any one thing. Once I finish this education, then I'll have even more doors open than I do now, so I can really go any direction I want.
Well, that's awesome. Well, this is great. So learning a lot overseas, making a few dollars, having a little bit of adventure is kind of cool. So we're going to kind of wrap this up. We're kind of going a little long here, but I want to first of all thank Kevin McAvania for joining us here today. Wish him a safe trip back to Egypt. And if any of you have any questions or you want to follow up with Kevin, you want to ask him any questions about how to find the job, what his experiences are, shoot us an email over here at info@ambulanceworld.com. and we'll make sure that we forward that on to him. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post in our on the blog along with this video some of the little blurbs, follow-ups, things that he suggested that you get in order if you're looking to go overseas, especially on one of these kind of military type contracts, places to look for job postings, and some of his specific recommendations. We'll list that on the blog too, so you can access it in the future. So Kevin, you have anything else you want to say before we go?
No, that's it. It's if you want to get into this job market, it's a great place to go. You can your job potential is unlimited. Working these jobs, it's just something you really need to commit to do. And once you're over there, it's hard to come back until you're done with the job.
Yeah, it's addictive. I know that a lot of guys, once they say, I'm going to do this first job, I'm going to pay off my bills, I'm going to pay off my house, and that's it. And then people get addicted to it. It's a lot of fun. And and just one thing real quickly that I just did want to throw out is one of the real benefits, at least for me, when I was doing this, is not just you certainly have a lot of adventure and excitement, and you get to do some real meaningful work in wherever the job is located, but your R&R, you get to go all over the, do a little globe trotting to your R&R too, which is pretty awesome.
Yep.
So, alrighty, guys. Everybody, listen, thanks for joining us over here at ambulanceworld.com. And if you have any more questions, feel free to shoot us an email, info@ambulanceworld.com. And this is Evan saying goodbye, and everybody, stay safe out there.
Thanks for listening to the Ambulance World podcast at www.ambulanceworld.com. Please remember to like us on Facebook and sign up for our free newsletter and updates. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. Any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us at info@ambulanceworld.com. Stay safe and enjoy life.